Going live. And you can hear me okay, yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marcia Gordon, and I'm the President and CEO of the Business Council of Westchester. And I would like to welcome you to the first webinar in the Business Council of Westchester's Anti-Racism Educational Series. The Business Council of Westchester is committed to standing against racism and to create a call to action for all of our members to make a difference in the communities we all represent. We will continue to seek opportunities for our organization to play a critical role in both advancing the conversation around dismantling racism and in taking actionable steps to support real change. As many of you know, we recently announced our first steps in our multifaceted program that includes listening, actions, resources, programming, and more. We are so pleased to have so many other strong voices in our community join us in our partnership to kick off the first in a series of educational sessions, with today's on unconscious bias being the first. We especially want to thank our presenting partner, Balancing Life's Issues, and our event partners from around New York State. And I have to say, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people on from all over New York State. So special thanks to the Business Council of New York State, Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce, New York State Economic Development Council, Putnam County Business Council, and Westchester Putnam Workforce Development Board. Now I would like to introduce Heidi Davidson, co-founder and CEO of Galvanize Worldwide and BCW Board Chairman. Heidi?
Thank you, Marcia. Good morning, everyone. I join Marcia and I'm pleased to represent the Board of Directors of the BCW in welcoming you to this kickoff of our anti-racism educational session as well. And I thank all of our partners too. As Marcia mentioned, the BCW is committed to standing against racism. We will join forces at the federal, state, and local levels with business organizations that share our same desire to create a strong call to action for all of our collective members to make a difference in the communities we all represent. Our goal is to advance the conversation to end racism with actionable steps to support real change. We hope you find these sessions valuable. We encourage you to share the links with your entire company and your networks. They're free, and the full schedule can be found on the BCW website at www.thebcw.org. Please help us spread the word. The more the merrier. And thank you again for joining. I'll turn it back to Marcia now.
Thank you, Heidi. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Gina Davis, founder and CEO of True Synergy Incorporated. Gina is a board-certified executive coach, corporate trainer, organizational development consultant, and national speaker. She's founder and CEO at True Synergy, and she leads a team who is authentically committed to empowering and inspiring others to be their best selves. She is a transformational change agent for organizations who wish to turn their companies into diverse, collaborative, and thriving workforces. As you will see, her drive and energy are infectious as she can elevate her clients and help them live to their true potential. Gina's coaching, training, and consulting style is intuitive, always full of energy, with a touch of gentle persistence. Knowing that the answers are already within, her job is simply to foster cognitive, emotional, and behavioral changes that achieve desired goals. She's dedicated to assisting individuals and organizations find excellence in ways that support a collaborative spirit. Her expertise is developed in the behavioral and social sciences, where she spends most of her time working with clients in the areas of emotional intelligence, appreciative inquiry, mindfulness, positive psychology, and NLP. Her focus is on developing sustainable processes as a thinking partner to foster learning, dialogue, transformation, and innovation for major companies worldwide. After years in corporate marketing and after owning her own successful marketing communications agency, Dr. Gina decided to combine her experience in marketing communication strategies with her knowledge of organizational development frameworks to launch True Synergy, a full-service professional and organizational development consulting practice in 2010. Again, she uses her great skills in marketing strategy to help organizations develop a collaborative internal culture and a strong external brand presence. She's a graduate of the University of Southern California with a BA in Communication Arts and Sciences, has an MBA in Marketing from the University of Phoenix, and again has a doctorate as well. She is a board-certified coach and a member of the board-certified coach inaugural circle from the Center of Credentialing and Education. She received her coaching training and certification from them. She is an Everything DISC authorized partner, certified trainer, has a certificate in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica, and is a has earned her doctorate in organizational development at the California School for Professional Psychology at University. It's my pleasure to turn this over now to Dr. Gina.
Thank you so much, Marcia. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I like to bring you all greetings from Los Angeles, California. And I am grateful and excited to be partnering with Balancing Life Issues and all of you. I have worked with Balancing Life Issues for many, many years on topics like this. And I am thrilled to be here with all of you today. Some of these topics you probably have heard before, many times before. Some of them not so much. Some of them you've heard a lot about. But there's some things that I'd like for you to consider as we move forward in today's topic. And I want to give you a word. It's called Shoshin. Shoshin. Shoshin means beginner's mind. It's the word from Zen Buddhism, and it refers to having an attitude of openness, eagerness, and it lacks preconceptions when studying a subject. And when studying at an advanced level, you want to just release everything that you already know and just approach this topic with a beginner's mind. Other things that I like for you to consider as we're looking at this topic are a couple of things. One, to stay present with this topic. There's going to be some things that might surprise you, you may agree with, you may not agree with. When answering questions, use I statements and try to hold the space for yourself and for other people. There are going to be things that you may not, again, agree with, but feel free to hold that space for yourself and hold that space for others. And we're going to be engaging in a dialogue. So it's based on your point of view, your perception, not about agreeing or disagreeing, but being open to different possibilities. Another thing that I want you to consider is know the difference between intent and impact. Understand how intention can create impact. You can intend not to intend to do something, but understanding that your intentions, whether intended or not intended, can have an impact on other people. And it creates a lasting impact. So keep that in mind as we move forward today. So I have a question for all of you to get things started. Which image best describes how you are feeling right now? So I'd like for you to do is post in the chat, how are you feeling? How have you been feeling? 1 through 6. Go ahead and post in the chat for me. Okay, they're all coming in. Some 2s, we got some 5s, we got a lot of 2s, 4s, 2s, 5s, a lot of 5s, 4s, 2s, 1s. Yes. Yes. Everybody, today we're living in some unprecedented times. Not only are we reeling from the effects of a global pandemic, we are now facing at this moment a racial pandemic. And it's time for us to come together as a nation to create real change. What does that change look like? What are we going to be doing differently that we have not done before? So we're going to talk about unconscious bias. Unconscious bias, also implicit bias, is a novel concept. And it was first introduced in a paper in 2006, where it was introduced as, and I quote, the new science of unconscious mental processes that has a substantial bearing on discrimination law, and refutes the long-standing belief that humans are guided solely by explicit beliefs, which I'll talk about later, and by their conscious intentions. If we were to look more closely and do some reflection within ourselves, the idea of implicit bias helps us to see prejudices in unexpected places, including our own behavior. So I have some questions to start. So question number 1 is, are you aware of your unconscious bias? And if biases are unconscious, then how do we know we have them? What do you think? Post your thoughts in the chat. Also, my other question is, what types of biases are you aware of? And have you experienced your own biases, or have you seen biases in other people? What do they look like? Okay, so we have some people that are saying that I'm aware of some biases, but not all. I have them. I'm aware of some biases. I look at age discrimination. I'm aware of racial biases. I'm experiencing both myself and others. I'm aware and have been conditioned to accept them. I'm aware of my unconscious bias. Okay. Okay, I don't think we are aware of our unconscious biases. Yes. Aware of some, working to learn more about unconscious bias. I'm aware of some of mine. Okay, yes. So let's keep going. So when we look at unconscious bias, what is it exactly? So it's all about people's preferences. We all have biases. We have natural preferences towards what we like, what we don't like. You may prefer a big dog. You may prefer a little dog. You may prefer blondes to brunettes. You may prefer tall men to short men. You may prefer people who look, sound, and act like you, that share your interests. We all have them. And there's nothing wrong with having biases that are what you prefer. Now, but from a social construct, when we look at bias, it's known as a prejudice that's in favor, for, or against a person, a group, compared with another, usually in ways that are considered to be unfair. Biases may be held by individual groups, institutions, and can have negative or positive consequences on other people. So there are two types of biases. There's conscious bias, which is explicit bias, which you are conscious of what your preferences are. You know what you like, you know what you don't like, you know what is important to you, you know what's not important to you. And then unconscious bias, which we talked about, which is implicit bias. This is to understand when these biases are not known to you. They're hidden from you, but you act according to some sort of stimulus. Okay, so it's important to note that biases, whether it's unconscious or conscious, are not limited to ethnicity or race. Though racial bias and discrimination are well documented, biases may exist towards any social group. So it could be based on one's age, their gender identity, their physical abilities, their religion, their sexual orientation, their weight, and many other characteristics are subject to our biases. In unconscious bias, there are social stereotypes about certain groups of people that individuals forms outside their own conscious awareness. We all hold these unconscious biases in our lives. We do. And I want you to be able to understand that once you begin to identify what those biases are and do some reflection with yourself, you'll be able to uncover them and make different choices when you're interacting with other groups. So I want to ask you all another question. What are some biases that you've actually seen in our society today? What are some of the actual biases that you actually seen, heard, or maybe you've experienced yourself? Please post in the chat. Let's get granular here. Go ahead and post it. So religious bias. So give me some examples of some actual biases that you've actually have seen. So racial bias disguised as jokes or advice. Hatred among races, appearance, anti-Semitism. Yes, biases towards attractive people, obesity. Okay. Biases in favor of people with Ivy League education. Thank you. Yes, let's get specific. Biases towards transgender people. Yes. Biases with dress code, hairstyle. Absolutely. Assumptions about people with certain political views. Absolutely. Ageism. Biases against people who can't communicate well. Yes. Language barriers. Yes. Biases specifically against older people in the workplace. Biases towards speaking in another language other than English. Yes. And how do these biases, how do you believe they impact other people? We talked about intention versus impact. How do you think these biases impact other people? What do you think in the chat, please? They create fear and anger, absolutely. limits growth potential, pain, embarrassment, limit opportunity. Yes. Oh, someone said biases against single people, shame, insecurity, sense of exclusion, supremacist bias, demeans Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Yes. Sometimes their bias is in favor of people who are wealthy. Sadness, embarrassment, isolation, imposter syndrome. Yes, these biases creates all kinds of emotional, mental, and behavioral challenges for other people. And we want to be aware of those things. And we want to look at them and begin to make some changes. Very good, everybody. Very good. Okay. So we've put together some possible causes. So, we've got pop culture norms, bypassing rationality and logic, assumptions of something that's being positive or negative. I mean, there's all kinds of causes for unconscious bias, but they're with knowing, and I want to be clear here, knowing that there's so many different causes, that there's not just one cause. There are so many different causes that creates the systemic unconscious bias that is more negative than positive, that we want to be able to look at in our society. But what I want to ask you is, what do you think some of the other causes? So we've got cultural backgrounds, we've got pop culture norms, we got the propensity to stereotype other people. We tend to bypass all rationale and logic. We make all of these different assumptions. But what else? What are some other possible causes? Because this is just 3. What are some other possible causes that you can cite? Yes, everybody in the chat, thank you. So let's look. Causes: fear, power control, legal systems, historic patterns. People feel insecure about themselves, so they may project certain behaviors and attitudes on other people. People tend to want to stay in their comfort zone. They call it the ostrich syndrome. Lack of education, especially about their history. Fear, yes. Ignorance and fear, privilege, fear of change. There's a lot of fear going on as it relates to unconscious bias. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to discuss it because of that fear. Fear of what? What do you think the fear is about? Fear of not knowing? Fear of knowing? What do you think it is? Having these types of discussions and really opening up and pulling back the curtain on our own biases and how they impact people is the first step to change. Some people, there's a lot of fear. I see in the chat, a lot of fear of differences, fear of the unknown. Yes, everybody. There's one of my favorite acronyms for fear is, you ready to write this down? False evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. What's the evidence? What's the evidence? So if we can really understand what's driving our fear and what's underneath that fear, we can begin to eradicate it and look at things differently, and being open to new possibilities, open to new perspectives, open to understanding each other as a group and being able to work together. So someone says in the chat, I believe that fear comes from a lack of education about others. In most homes, people only associate with like people. So growing up, you fear those you don't know. Yes. false evidence appearing real. Yes. So we all know that some of our unconscious bias can come from this feeling of fear. And we need to be able to really get clear on what that is. Very good, everybody. Very good. So there's a new concept, not so new, selective attention. And selective attention is a cognitive process in which a person attends to one or few sensory inputs while ignoring the other ones. So an example of selective attention might be you're at a restaurant, well, not now, but maybe you're, before COVID, you're at a restaurant or you're at a wedding or you're at a place where there's multiple conversations going on. You've got the clinking of the glasses and the forks and many other sounds that are out there, things that are going on all around you are competing for your attention. Okay, that's an example of selective attention. So you're hearing all of these different things and your sensory is trying to focus on the thing that it's trying to focus on. Okay. Selective attention can be good or bad, but from an unconscious bias perspective, selective attention limits you from seeing the bigger picture. It limits you from considering other possibilities. For example, there were 3 models that were associated with selective attention. There's the whole theories, and these were models of attention based on the work of Broadbent, Treisman, and Dutch and Dutch. And they were also referred to as the bottleneck models of attention, because they explain how sometimes when we're competing with all of these different sensory information coming at us, it becomes there's this bottleneck, and the information can't get through, and it creates this kind of bottleneck. So if you want to learn more about that, I really suggest that you look this up. But it's really based on our experiences and what you see, what you hear, and what you believe. Sometimes our selective attention can impair us by, if we have a particular thought about something or a particular belief about something, it doesn't matter what maybe other information that might be coming to you or other things that you may want to consider. You're just really focused on that one particular thought or belief, and you're not willing to see other possibilities. Even though there are other possibilities swirling around you, you are choosing to not see the bigger picture or not consider other possibilities. So that's what selective attention is all about. So when you look at this image here, what are you thinking about? What's coming to mind? Please post in the chat. What does this image mean to you? Okay, how sad? Okay, Trump, racism, ignorance, pain and hurt, racial bias and prejudice. Yes, Asians unfairly. But more importantly, how does it make you feel when you see this? Cruelty and ignorance, her fear, angry, sad, feeling like a target, profound anger, sadness. Yes, self-worth, defeat but bravery. Yes, everybody, no feelings, no feeling, angry, frustrated. Yes, these are the types of biases that have a negative impact on our society. And by looking at this image, it really brings to bear the light of the systemic racism that is permeating our society as we speak. Okay? No, she is not a virus. Exactly. She is not a virus. But the fear in her eyes is very painful. Very painful. Keep that all in mind. Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, this is profound. What does this mean to you? Oops, post in the chat. What does that mean to you when you see this quote? Know better, do better. Face your fears. You will be brave and think in ways without knowing why. Be aware. It's important for you to become aware. Yes, become aware. Do your work. Self-awareness is all about knowing yourself, understanding yourself, really digging in and understanding where your biases are coming from, and understanding what needs to change in reference to them. How are you dealing with all the sensory information that is coming on around you? How are you making decisions? How are you communicating with others? Are you thinking before you're speaking? These are the critical things. And I'm a specialist in behavior, so I really approach this from a behavioral point of view when you're looking at unconscious bias. And it's less about looking outwardly at all of the bias that is going on, but really searching inside yourself and really getting in touch with it. And really making a decision and making a choice and choosing to act and behave and respond differently than you may have in the past. Okay, so someone says accountability. So taking that accountability, very good. Okay. So some best practices in the workplace. So everything starts from the top. Bias in the workplace, discrimination in the workplace, diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, and access. All of those things begin at the top. And it's important that leaders at every level of an organization lead the charge through actual deeds and action. We've heard a lot. I've received hundreds of emails from corporations that have made declarations on creating a more inclusive work environment. But those words need to be backed up by real action, real change, and being an ally and an advocate for it. If it doesn't stop with the top tier, if it doesn't start with all you executives, and I'm looking at all of you executives out there, all of you leaders out there, it has to begin with you and you making a decision that change will happen in your organization, and that you're going to put systems in place, systems and processes in place that's going to change the trajectory of your organization. Inclusion, equity, and belonging has to begin with you. The onus is not on your employees to feel included, to feel like they belong. It's on our leadership to help them to feel included and for them to belong. Someone says inclusive and equity are not the same either. Leadership should also understand that also. Yes. I want to also say, I want to speak a little bit about structural racism. And structural racism has been built on within the fabric of our society. And it's a system which public policies, institutional practices, cultural representation, and other norms work in various and often reinforcing ways to perpetrate racial group inequality and inequity. It identifies dimensions of our history and culture that have allowed privileges associated with whiteness and disadvantages with people of color to endure and adapt over time. This has been going on and on and on and on. Structural racism is not something that a few people or institution experience. This is a feature of our social, economic, and political systems which still exist. So, and these are conversations that we need to have. It's time to have the conversation about structural racism. It's time to pull our head out of the sand and really dig in and have the conversation with each other. Someone says structural racism is a chronic illness. It is. But here's the thing, and this is a rhetorical question. I just want you all to think about it. If it's an illness, can it be cured? If it's an illness, can it be cured? We've been dealing with this structural racism for 480 years in America. Is it something that we can do? Is it something that can be healed? Is it something that can be turned around? Let's see, we got a people depends on how much we work to heal. We can't heal it all, but some. Teach our children not to be racist. It could be once, I can't see what it says here. You guys are really posting here. First, it has to be acknowledged. However, it needs to be focused on by everyone. Yes, with love, patience, and education, an open and honest conversation. Yes, yes. But what about the rest of you? For those of you who haven't posted yet, do you think it's something that can be healed? If we all come together, if it's acknowledged, if it's discussed, if it's considered, someone says we have no choice but to heal. But we all have to be on the same page in order to eradicate structural racism. I want to talk a little bit about cultural awareness. And it's the sensitivity to and recognizing of nuances of one's own and others' culture. The similarities and differences that exist amongst people. It also means working from a cultural perspective of the other person and not from your own perspective. So when you're communicating, when you're interacting, when you're dealing with a person from another culture, you are acting from their perspective, not your own. What's the golden rule? We say, treat others the way that we want to be treated. We've heard that rule before. Some say it's a good rule. But I would say that we shouldn't focus on the golden rule. And maybe we should look at the author Tony Alessandro's rule, the platinum rule. Treat others the way that they want to be treated. Communicate with them at where they are. Put yourself in their shoes and relate to them that way. That's having cultural awareness. Understanding your own culture, understanding your own biases, understanding your own beliefs, your own values, but also understanding others' culture, understanding their beliefs, understanding their values, and respecting them. That's what's important. Okay? These are some things that I really want you to think about. The other one is, we have here on the slide, valuing diversity and inclusion, understanding that we each share the same characteristics of difference. Yes, we are all different. When they say, oh, we are one, we should be one, we should celebrate our differences. We should be thrilled that we are different. Because when we're different, we're what? What happens when we are different? How does that help us when we're different? We're able to hear different perspectives. We're able to get other ideas. We're able to consider other possibilities. We're able to learn something new. So it's important for us to value difference and create a diverse, inclusive work environment so that we're able to get all of the richness that we all have to share with each other. It's very important that we do this. And if we don't, then we end up having what we term in business groupthink, where everybody's thinking the same, feeling the same, believing the same, and there's no innovation, there's no creativity. It's just one way of thinking. So let's see what we have here in the chat. So differences enrich us, groupthink kills innovation. That's right, exactly. Exactly. Someone says, I think we need to learn more about actual racism happening. It helped me to realize and understand existing racism when I saw statistics on police brutality, when I heard personal accounts from a friend who was yelled nasty racial slurs during his baseball games in high school. Yes, it's about doing the work, doing our own work. And if we're not doing our work, if we're not willing to face this and look at this and say to ourselves that this doesn't exist in my world, then quite frankly, I will offer to say that there might be some cognitive dissonance going on, or some feelings of maybe some type of delusion that might be going on, because it is happening. It's happening in real time. And this is an opportunity for us to look at things differently. Let's talk about some other best practices. Somebody says diversity, inclusion, belonging are siblings. Yes, and we've added some other ones. We've added, so it's diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, and access. Because we want to give our citizens with disabilities opportunities and equal access to things, to opportunities. Also, people of different sexual orientation, people, women. We want to be able to create an equitable culture for all people and give access to all people, not just a select few, but for many. So now we are diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, access. Please write that down. So here's some more best practices. So performance appraisal, so feedback on work performance. So when you're giving your feedback, these are for my leaders out there who have teams, when you're giving feedback on work performance, again, consider looking at actual skill set and less about the person in terms of the characteristics of an individual. Sometimes we may look at a person's behavior or persona and write our performance reviews based on that, as opposed to looking at, okay, what are the roles and responsibilities of this job? What are the skill sets that are needed for this job? And has this person met or excelled at these particular skill sets or these particular job roles that I have for this particular position? Okay. If there are behavioral challenges that are happening with an employee, you want to take a step back first before having the conversation. Check your own self. What is going on in your mind? What are your beliefs about this person? What are your feelings about this person? Because your beliefs, your feelings, your biases drives that performance appraisal. So before you even go in to give that feedback, check yourself. Inclusive role models. Having inclusive role models within your organization and talking about these role models is very important to give employees a sense of belonging, inspiration, and hope for the future. So for example, we've got Dr. Erica H. James, who is Wharton's first Black dean, and Nicholas Johnson, who is Princeton's first Black valedictorian, or Carol L. Holt here in California, who is USC's, fight on, first Black female president of the university's 139-year history. And we have Sonia Sotomayor, who is the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice. Or Liu Yang, who became the first female Chinese astronaut to go into space. What inclusive role models are you discussing and talking about and sharing with your employees? Not just on special days and special months, but all year round. What are you sharing with your employees? Okay, the list goes on and on and on of diverse first. How does it make you feel when you see all of these different people doing all of these great things and being able to share it with other people, to be able to talk about it, to be able to ask questions? Why did it take so long? These are conversations that you can begin to have with your employees. Okay. Someone says, I feel like I'm able to do it too. We could be honest with history, like recognizing how Jesus was Black. Okay. All right. Having these conversations, no matter what they are, just putting them out there, no matter what, is important. The other thing is that I want to encourage employees to share their stories. Create a culture of psychological safety where one is able to show themselves who they are, to be able to express their true identity. That's something that companies can do. And I've noticed that more and more companies are developing a culture of psychological safety and beginning to allow, and I won't say allow, I'm going to say encourage employees to be their authentic selves and communicate their authentic selves. Okay. I want to also give you, this is not on the screen here, but I want to give you 6 additional practices that I want you to consider. For those of you who are in human resources, educate your leaders. Create training programs, lunch and learns, talks, special meetings where you're able to, if you have leaders who are struggling around the issues of creating a more diverse and inclusive work culture, begin to educate them, be that support system, have their back, and give them as much guidance as you possibly can. One thing that I'm doing with one of my clients now is I'm forming an inclusion council that's made up of different levels of an organization, where we discuss best practices, where we brainstorm ideas to create a more inclusive work culture. Celebrate, like we talked about, celebrate employee differences. It's okay, it's wonderful, it's what organizations need. Listen to employees. When they're challenged, when they're faced with some type of racial discrimination, listen to them, investigate, get all of the facts, and take action, okay? And then hold more effective meetings, okay? Effective meetings mean making sure that everyone in the room's voice is heard. Not just a select few, but everyone's voice is heard. So someone says, as an African-American female, I feel tired when I'm asked to lead the committee for African-American History Month or Women's History Month or planning a baby shower for a colleague, okay? This is something that's important. You wanna listen to that. What does that mean? What is that saying? This is what this particular participant is describing, is a form of bias that's being perpetrated onto her. And so before asking someone of color to lead the next Black History Month, or woman to lead Women's History Month, or a Latina or Latino to lead Mexican History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month, think first. Think about what this might be saying to them, and not make assumptions that, oh, they'll want to do it because it's for their culture. Maybe you want to ask the question first, okay? Someone says, also conduct adverse impacts on promotions and salary programs. Minority and women pay equality issues need to be addressed. Take action. Absolutely. Absolutely. Communicate goals and measure progress in your hiring practices, in pay inequalities. Do your research with people. And see what's going on with your hiring practices. See what's going on with your pay. See what's going on with how you communicate with different employees, and measure your progress. Here's some other things. Now, there is, I'm sure you all have heard about the implicit association test, the IAT. That was developed by Harvard University, and it is a way of measuring and determining your unconscious bias. I know many of you might have taken some of the tests listed here. Some of you may not, and I would like to encourage you to do so. But here's something I want you to be aware of and think about. This test is not a diagnostic test. Okay, it is also not a test to use in your hiring practices. It's not an assessment, okay? It's not that kind of tool. It's a tool for educational purposes, okay? The tests actually have shown some productive outcomes according to the research of about, they did some groups of about 200. But for individual use, it is good to use it as an educational tool. For some people, it can be used as a wake-up call for you to help you make some changes. There's been some studies that says that the more a person may take the racial bias test, so if they take it over and over and over again, the less racist they appear to be. So say you take the test and it comes back and it shows that, oh my goodness, you might be a racist. The more you take the test, the less racist you appear to be, because the brain is starting to make the changes in the brain. So it's also a good practice for you as well. Okay? I am only one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. And I won't refuse to do what I can do. Helen Keller. Helen Keller, for those of you who don't know, was an author, political activist, and lecturer. And she was the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree from Radcliffe College. And this, she was born in the 1800s. But this quote is so apropos. What does this quote mean to you when you see it? Please post your thoughts in the chat. What does this mean? Anybody? What does it mean to you? You can lead from anywhere. We all have a part to play. I can make a change no matter how small. Keep an open mind and you can do anything. Make a difference any way you can. A little bit helps. Yes. We all can make a difference. We're getting, okay. We can all make a difference. No excuses. It starts with me. Absolutely, everybody. Absolutely. Okay. There's another quote that I want to leave you with as we wrap up today. And you guys all have heard this quote before. You only need to be brave, not perfect. You only need to be brave, not perfect. So as we wrap up, remember that you are not alone. We're all participants in unconscious bias at one point or another. You took an important step today by coming to this webinar. Confronting unconscious bias is a continuous process. It's not a single event. Keep doing your work. Keep doing your work. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. And I am going to turn it back over to Marcia, who has some final remarks. Thank you.
Dr. Gina, how can we ever thank you for launching this anti-racism webinar series with such a thoughtful, enlightening, invigorating, and introspective webinar? And to all of the leaders today attending from throughout New York State who participated in such an active, engaged way, we thank you. Let's listen to Dr. Gina, who said to us that as leaders, and we are the leaders, it is our responsibility to create an environment that includes diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, and access. Have I left any out, Dr. Gina?
No, you got them all.
I took
Yes.
notes. I took notes. And it's up to us to create a culture of psychological safety. So with that, I want to invite everyone. This is the first of a series of 8 webinars, which will be held throughout the summer. The next one is next Thursday at this time, Fostering Inclusion in the Workplace. Please mark your calendars now. You can register at thebcw.org. They are all listed. I want to thank our partners, Balancing Life's Issues, the Business Council of New York State, Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce, New York State Economic Development Council, the Westchester Putnam Workforce Development Board, and the Putnam County Business Council. Thank you all for attending. please spread the word about these webinars. Invite your employees, invite your colleagues, and don't let fear be a word in our vocabulary, because remember, it just stands for false evidence appearing real. So let's move ahead with positivity, that positive culture, and the great things we learned today from Dr. Gina Davis. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe, be healthy. When you're outside, please wear your masks. Enjoy.